Welcome to the Trouble with Writing podcast, where we chat about the real issues that stop multilingual writers producing effective English and see where we can help. Hi, Pete. Hi, Paul. How have your days been so far?
Hello, Phil.
Hi, Pete. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Paul.
Well, I'll tell you, my day has been terrible. Right before preparing to record the podcast, my main computer decided to die on me, and it won't restart. So I had to reconfigure everything through my laptop. At the same time, one of my students is graduating from university today and really wanted me to attend. So she's been messaging me, and her mother's in attendance from Japan. So she's very insistent I attend, which I can't. I didn't sleep last night. I haven't eaten, and I'm not even sure if my laptop is going to work. So hasn't gone so well, and I've been really looking forward to seeing you chaps. How's your day been so far, Pete?
Well, first of all, the good news is, Paul, it's the weekend, right? Almost the weekend, and things can only get better, right?
Thank you. I hope so.
My day so far has been quite good. Yeah, actually, I'm pleased because the sun's out. It's actually here in Chile. It's got a little bit chilly again, seasonal, but the good thing is it tends to get nice just at the weekend when we want to go out and do things. So that's good.
Great.
What about you, Phil?
Yeah, I am recovering from doing a bit of travel back to the UK this week, and I'm off again tomorrow. So a bit of a whistle-stop tour, and just been trying to catch up with everything today. And one of my clients didn't do her homework, so it's not been a perfect day for me either. But we get it that it's never easy, and all of you listeners probably face problems that are even worse and challenges with your writing and stuff. So I guess that's what we're going to chat about a little bit today. Is it not?
Yeah, challenges. We all face challenges.
Especially
yes, we do.
When you're trying to write in a language which you've learned. I sometimes write in Spanish, but I have to say I don't write like professionally in Spanish. And, I think all of the people we help are to some extent professional writers or academics, aren't they? And have a lot of obstacles to overcome.
Yeah. I mean, I can really relate to the people that we help because myself, so I've learned 3 foreign languages, but to be honest, I'm only confident writing in one of them. So that would be Spanish, but I also speak French and German, but I don't feel confident writing in either of those, to be honest. So, and that is, despite the fact that, I did a degree in French, and I was in Germany for 3 consecutive summers learning German at a language school. I can speak it fairly well. I can communicate, but writing is a whole other ballgame, right?
Well, what's kind of the biggest thing that holds you back? Would you say what's your biggest challenge with writing in those languages?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think German is possibly the grammar. I think it's grammar. I think it's vocabulary. I mean, the challenges that I face are similar to the challenges that our students face, right? So, it's in terms of vocabulary, it's like trying to find the right words to say what I want to say, like without having to, go to online dictionaries all the time. And the grammar, it's the sentence structure, right? So, German grammar is quite different from English grammar. For example, you put verbs can go at the end, like the infinitive goes at the end of the sentence, right? And that's challenging.
I think, with my own writing, if I was doing it in Spanish, I'd struggle with style the most because, I'm not saying I'm great at Spanish grammar. I'm definitely not, but I think there are tools that can help there, and it's more of a question of, in my mind, if it's right or wrong, but which way around to put a sentence, or the sort of level of formality or the length of it. That's so different in the Spanish-speaking world to the way the things I would usually write. So for me, that's what would be a problem. A lot of my clients say, time as well, right? This is a big one these days. Like, it takes more time, so it's another issue for people.
You almost get the impression that although there are more writing tools to help them, like digital tools, that time now is more of a factor than ever, because maybe they're engaged with too many tools instead of just good old-fashioned key pounding. I have a student client who is really insistent on using AI, Grammarly, all of these sort of word processing tools integrated into one platform, and it slows him down. It really slows him down. And I would try to encourage him just to trust himself and edit later, but he writes and edits at the same time, and gets nothing done. So, like your student, often his homework goes undone. It's makes a challenge for a coach.
Yeah, time is one of the biggest challenges, right? So I always think that we have to accept that improving our writing in a foreign language requires a time investment, right?
Yeah.
A lot of time, I would say, depending on your level, right? Depending on your level, on your challenges. And then I always think that you have to have a very clear goal, right? You have to have something that drives you forward, right? Which is, I think, something that really helped our special guest for today, right? Shall I introduce our special guest?
Yeah, please do.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Camillo Barone is a reporter, writer, and producer, and he has recently obtained a master's from Columbia Journalism School. He is from Italy, but is currently living in New York.
Welcome to the podcast, Camillo. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, Camillo.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Okay, so right now, Camillo, you are in New York, right? And where exactly? Where are we talking you? Where are you exactly?
So I moved to New York in August 2022. Right now, I just graduated a week ago from Columbia Journalism School. So this place is where I've lived in the past 10 months, literally from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. every day at Columbia.
Camillo, I have a question to kick things off for you. You're in New York. You just graduated from Columbia. Congratulations. It sounds on the surface like that was your goal for English writing. But if we go back in time, why did you want to improve your English writing skills initially? Was it to pursue journalism abroad, or was that a result of your having improved?
Exactly for that reason. I've been for 4 to 5 years professional journalist in Rome, in Italy, working for leading national and international publications, Vatican Radio, Vatican News, and for 2 years, the biggest experience has been for 2 years in the Rome bureau of CNBC, and for another year on a leading Italian online newspaper. It's called the Post Internazionale. So I've always worked in Italian, but my biggest dream was to leave Italy and to start a career in foreign journalism, in what for me is foreign journalism, so American journalism most of all, or British journalism. Applying to many jobs abroad wasn't that useful, since you need a visa, and the only way to have a working visa is through going to a journalism school abroad. That after that would allow you at least for a 1-year working visa after your graduation. And I totally see the point of that right now, since without a journalism school here in the US, I would have never acquired some of the basic writing techniques that every English writing journalist needs. So I felt, going back to last year, I felt a summer that I hugely needed an English writing course to at least to get prepared before moving to the US and to Columbia Journalistic School. That was the main reason why.
Hey, Camillo, would you mind elaborating a little bit on techniques? You mentioned techniques that journalists need, right, to write in English as a foreign language.
Yeah, so there are basic journalistic writing structures that every journalist needs to know. How to write the lead of a piece, how to be impactful as every journalist should be, how to go well in depth inside a body of a piece, and how to cite sources, how much space you should dedicate to each of your sources, and how to write a perfect conclusion that will catch a great synthesis for your piece, especially when it comes to long form writing, which is what I specialize in here at Columbia Journalistic School. So these are the basic techniques that every English speaking and writing journalist should learn. But then there are also people like me, not English natives, not English natives, that according to me should practice even more. There are way more and more techniques that they should practice before studying a course like that. Because especially with Italian, Spanish, and Romanian, but also French, the way of conceiving the single structure of a sentence is totally different from an English perspective.
And you mentioned being impactful. How to be impactful when you're writing in English. What type of things would you consider important in order to be impactful?
There's just one rule for that, which is the rule of show, don't tell. Whatever thing you have to tell, you have to write for your readers, is something that they have to imagine, that they have to visualize. And so you have to show them something, not tell them something. Especially when you have the great immense lack of reporting on the field. You need to be able to show them what you see, so that your eyes can become their own eyes. You know, that's the greatest thing that I learned here about writing an impactful lead. Writing an impactful lead is the most important. It's the most important technique that every journalist should acquire to allow their readers to move on inside the piece. Because many readers would just stop at the headlines or at the first few lines of a piece. You know,
I couldn't wait to jump in and say I'm so happy that you talked about show, don't tell, because I'm a fiction writer and I help people with fiction, and of course that's like a big part of writing in a more creative way. But it's great to hear people talking about functional writing, which is also showing, because it's, you know, even if you're writing an email, you can show that you're angry rather than tell people that you're angry, right? And it's more effective. And
exactly.
But what have you learned about showing in English? Are there like words or phrases that you should use or avoid?
That's a very hard question. There are many verbs that one can avoid in English writing when you want to show and not to tell. Like specific, it's very hard to explain. Like specifically when you want to tell the personal feelings of a person. One of my teachers here would say, just avoid using the verb to feel. Say that person is feeling angry, that person is feeling happy, that person is feeling mad because that thing happened. Just show why, show how they are angry, show how they are happy, show to the reader what that person is doing in that moment right now, and what are her habits. So there are so many verbs that you can just avoid. Like the most simplistic verbs, like to feel, to think, also sometimes to be, and just go right away inside what that person is actually doing. I know that this is somehow a little bit difficult when you write about politics, when you write about the economy, but it can be very, very effective when you write fiction stories, or when you write feature stories, human stories, which are the stories that I like the most.
These are challenges. They're also challenges for English native writers, right? For anyone, right? Not only in English as a foreign language, right? I think really great tips, that your teacher gave you about how to show, not tell, about how to, avoiding these verbs like feel and think, and actually showing instead. What I wanted to ask you was, like before you got to the school, right? What were your like immediate challenges before that in terms of writing in English?
Very, very simply, the challenge was to start, to break the ice. Breaking the ice is truly the hardest step, the most difficult step to do. That's why I tried to attend some English writing classes, in-person classes, back in Rome during the spring, but that was not that helpful. So I immediately thought there was probably the best way to break the ice with English writing was to find a personal private coach, personal private teacher. And that's why then I remembered that message Pete sent me 2 years ago on LinkedIn, telling me if like whatever help you might need in the future, I'm going to be here. And that actually proved true, because it's what happened. 2 years after that, I just texted him back on June and started this course with him, and and that's how I started. So the biggest challenge is just to start sometimes, especially with things that you are the most afraid of.
Maybe I know Phil, you had like a follow-up question about that, about like identifying what exactly those challenges are, right?
Yeah, it's really how to identify them, because I think a lot of our listeners and a lot of the people we work with know that they have certain difficulties with writing, certain difficulties with English, and there's an overlap there. But what did you do to diagnose the areas you need to improve?
I just realized that actually I until that point I have probably written in English just a few times, just 2 or 3 times. So the big diagnosis that I had to do was I need to practice. I need to write as much as I can before getting into school. I need a person telling me to write at least a story every single week, and having a person who is coaching you, who is in a certain way forcing you to write and not to procrastinate on and on, was already a great achievement for me.
So it's practice, and then it's also the feedback, right? So the feedback that you get when you're practicing works as like the diagnosis. Okay.
I think that's the issue for every writer, really, even though they may not have issues in grammatical accuracy or something to the same extent as a language learner. All we know as writers is like what we can't do, right? My work's not getting accepted, or I feel like I can't write a sound journalistic article, and you need to both do it and get feedback, from a mentor, an editor, a colleague, anyone really, to say, that's what's up, because it's hard to switch off the part of your brain that's written it. So you read it as like, I know something's not working, but it can be hard to identify. But for everyone, I mean.
I was going to say, I agree with that, Phil. I think that for the writer, and I think in various ways we all write, the challenges manifest itself as frustration, manifests itself to us like feelings, because we may be writing in a vacuum, and yet writing is meant to be read. And if your writing isn't being read by a coach or even just a friend, you can't possibly see what others can see in your writing, because you're not looking at it from a reader's point of view with that fresh perspective that gives writing its power. Like, I have a student, actually a high school student. I don't usually work with high school students, but recently I took on a client from Italy, but she's living in Canada, attending high school, and she really wants to go to university here. And her weaknesses are writing. She's a very good speaker. And what she's experienced is that she can write quite a lot. She can produce a lot of material, but she has no idea what she's doing right, what she's doing poorly, what needs improvement, what doesn't. She has no idea. She can't grasp it. And until she worked with me, no one was giving her feedback. And this is a frustration I remember from school myself, especially university. You'd write something, you'd labor over it for weeks, submit it, and your professor might give you one or two comments like, well done, or this is really interesting. Thank you for the pat on the back, but it's not very helpful. I want detailed feedback. And you won't get that unless you have a private, dedicated coach. And my student is really improving now because I give her a lot of feedback and she's open to it. So I'm not sure what I was saying, but I just wanted to say I agree with that idea, Phil, and what Camillo has experienced with Pete's help. The most precious thing a writer can get is someone reading their writing. I mean, that's where it all starts, right?
Yeah, so going back to like the original question about diagnosing, right? So, part of diagnosing is getting regular feedback. And I've heard so many writers who have said, that is what they need. Like that, that's one of the main pain points, is that they're not getting enough feedback. And the other thing I wanted to ask Camillo, right, is do you consider yourself a brave person? Because I think, a lot of people fail just to overcome that first obstacle of just actually jumping in at the deep end, saying, right, I'm anxious about writing. I'm not sure if I can do it, but hey, I'm just going to do it and see what happens.
Yeah. Also for personal reasons, I've always thought that being brave and courageous is not something, as we said before, it's not something that it's inside your DNA, but it's something that you have to acquire day by day. We've also taking from your personal life instances. Every one of us on Earth has dealt at least one time in life with something that was absolutely scary. Having grown up as a gay person in a very, very complicated and tough context in Italy, in southern Italy, and then in Rome, I had to learn all by myself how to be brave, how to be courageous, and how to stand up just for myself when no one was there for me. This has helped me a lot in some way in the psychological aspect of being a good writer and a good journalist. When you stand for yourself, when you stand for what is important for you, you start realizing what are your main needs, I would say. What are your main needs, and what are the things in which you need to be better in your personal life, and how to treat yourself in the proper way, in the best way possible, helps you in getting new achievements also in your career, in your passions and dreams.
I didn't have anything to add on Camillo's speech about being brave, but I commend you, Camillo. That's for sure. And I think hopefully writing is a way that can help people's thought processes and their
writing in a certain ways. It's always, even, if you are a journalist, if you are a fiction writer, non-fiction writer, a producer, whatever, writing is always about telling a story. It's always storytelling. And what I always say to younger journalists, especially Italian younger journalists, if you don't know your story, if you don't know your personal story, it's going to be very complicated that you will be able to tell someone else's story. The problem of journalists today is they're very, very narcissistic, very, as they say here, auto-referential. So it's everything about me. But actually, very few people are able to tell their own stories, which is the exact opposite of being narcissistic. So when you're brave enough to know who you are, where you come from, what are your shadows, your personal shadows, what are your weaknesses, what are the things that made you suffer in life, you will never be able to have that kind of empathy with other sources that you're going to interview, and you're not going to have enough empathy to be impactful with your readers if you are a non-fiction writer. And this doesn't surprise me, honestly, because all the most successful journalists and fiction writers in the world have started their careers through knowing who they were and putting inside their stories a little bit of themselves in a non-narcissistic way. That's why sometimes it happens. It happens actually very often that gay and trans journalists and writers will just write about LGBTQ issues. And those are the best stories. Or Black people here in the US would be the very best writers about slavery, the history of slavery, which is great because they know how to go back in the history of their families, in the history of the country, and ask for more justice, writing their stories. So they know how to know their own stories, and this requires a lot of courage.
Great stuff. Really, really inspiring to listen to you, Camillo.
I'm wondering, what has your progress in English writing allowed you to achieve academically or professionally? What has it allowed you to achieve or get to a point?
So, going back to the beginning of my English writing career, doing that course last summer with Pete allowed me to start a real journalism school here at Columbia. Without that course, without that sort of imprinting, I think I would have been in probably in worse conditions here. So to start is the main achievement, the main progress that I had. And then here at school, practicing every single week and receiving feedback every single week proved to be the best solution. So avoiding to procrastinate, having a person to telling me every single week to submit an assignment, and having good examples and ideas on how to go on with my assignments. Another achievement would be probably starting writing cover letters for job applications and for other applications like scholarship applications, which anyway require a lot of storytelling too, if you want to write an impactful cover letter. So I noticed that month after month, everything was going in the right direction.
It's a great point you make about storytelling and knowing who you are, because those seem to be the benefits that you're going to produce your most successful writing and get opportunities if you can express that well. So great message for everyone out there as well, that, you know, this word storytelling is often just means marketing nowadays. It's everybody squawking about, oh, I want to sell stuff through storytelling. But really, if you can express your own story well, like you said, Camillo, then that's what's going to bring you benefits.
I like what you said about empathy too, right? So I mean, you have to know yourself in order to understand others, right?
Yes, you need to be empathetic with yourself 100%, 24 hours a day, to be in fully contact with yourself. That's why I always say that meditation, 10 minutes of meditation could be helpful also for writers as well. Just try to be as much as possible in contact with your deepest self, because there are so many ways today, in the world of today, to avoid being in contact with yourself, avoid talking to yourself. But the best relationships usually come with other people. The best relationship with other people usually come out only after you have a good contact with yourself. And this is the same for writing, I'm sure.
Along those lines, Camillo, do you have any particular journalism heroes who are great storytellers who represent these kind of concepts you've been talking about, of knowing yourself and representing your story in your point of view? Do you have any journalist heroes?
My biggest hero is an Italian journalist who died in 2006, who has always lived here in New York. Her books have been translated in more than 20 languages. She used to write in English, actually, even if she was Italian. Her name is Oriana Fallaci. I don't know if you ever heard of that of her. She's been the very first woman reporting during the Vietnam War. She's been the very first person actually interviewing the Ayatollah Khomeini during the 1979 Iranian Revolution. And she's the very first woman who managed to be embedded during the Iraqi war, the first Iraqi war in the 80s. And then she spent her very last years of her life here in New York. And she, like, her masterpiece that has been translated actually in 30 languages, so many more compared to her other books, was not a journalistic piece, but a very personal book called Letter to an Unborn Child. That is a book that every single young woman in Europe, but also in the Middle East, has probably read. It's a must-read for young women, because it's the personal story of her miscarriage while she was 28 years old, I guess, younger than 30 years old. And that book sold so many copies, and actually it's the book that allowed her to become a worldwide famous journalist. She was a writer. She was a writer and a journalist who knew who she was, who knew what kind of rights she wanted to ask to the Italian government for herself and for all the women in crazy years when the women were not allowed to get a divorce, when women were not allowed to choose of their own bodies in any form. And so she was advocating for herself, but she was advocating for the entire humanity. And this is what I love about her.
Just listening to you, Camillo, I mean, I can really see like how you're a great journalist, because I just feel like we're hanging on your every word. I mean, you just really know how to tell a story, right?
Captivating.
Yes, but I mean, we should do another podcast about speaking, because I'm pretty confident now in writing because I'm not a procrastinating person, so I know how to handle time. I know how to write. I know how to. I know how to write properly with a deadline. So I'm not afraid anymore of writing. But what I'm deeply afraid right now is speaking. It's speaking, of interviews, job interviews, and having conversations with editors. So this is a good practice for me too.
Well, if you speak the way you are speaking today, you'll win anyone over because you are a captivating storyteller. Really.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
But I truly need to practice. So that's why I'm very grateful.
You're doing fine, Camillo. We just care about semicolons and commas and stuff like that. If you go on the Trouble with Speaking podcast, they'll be correcting your every mispronunciation. But
it's all about the semicolons.
What tips would you give to other non-native writers to overcome the kinds of challenges that you faced and that they also face?
Greatest tip that is working very well with me is stop reading books in your own language. I'm very sorry to say that. I miss so many Italian writers. I miss reading so many good pieces of Italian journalists that I still love back in Italy, but that is not going to help. I'm pretty confident with the fact that you have to write as many English books as possible. Sorry, read as many English books as possible. Read at least 3 to 4 newspapers a day. Subscribe to newsletters and listen to podcasts, English podcasts, and then books. A good writer, first of all, is a good reader. I'm going to say that till the very last day of my own life. Of course, I have to keep up with Italian politics because it's my country. That's why I just dedicate probably only 30 minutes, 45 minutes every day to Italian newspapers and Italian books and Italian social media. That has helped me a lot. Also, another tip is, this is a tip that I would give to Italian people moving abroad. Just try to stay, to spend your time with foreigners. Spend your time with Americans, spending time with South Americans, with whatever, but please don't spend time with Italians. Otherwise, it's gonna be a great mess. This is a problem that also French people have. They love spending time with their own nationals, but that's not gonna help if you want to improve your language. You can try to be with them, to spend time with them and speak in English. I know that could be a little bit weird, but I'm happy that in a certain way I've been forced to do that because there are no other Italians here. I probably met just one other Italian here at Columbia, and that was pretty fine. Honestly. So yeah. And also, of course, also another great tip would be also, at least for the first years while you're practicing, the first months in which you move abroad, would be to watch TV series and movies with English subtitles, so that you can have a pretty good vision of what the actors are truly saying. And then, after a period of probably 6 months, a year, just cut all sorts of subtitles so that you can fully concentrate on what the characters are actually saying. But start with subtitles in English, of course, not in your language.
And any of the really, really useful. Any more tips specifically to writing, I'm thinking? Because a lot of those I think have to do with
practice.
Practice.
It's a very good practice to start journaling, personal journaling in English. I tried that. It felt so weird, but actually then it worked out. I have to admit that I'm still journaling a bit in Italian and a bit in English. Journaling is a very personal and psychological practice, so you need to be totally free. There are so many psychological aspects of my own life that I'm not able to express in English, unfortunately. So I have to admit that I still do that in Italian. But having a daily diary in English, writing a personal diary in English helps a lot. Of course, practicing every day your journalistic and whatever sort of writing you want to do in your life every day. Every day you need to write at least one piece. It might be a cover letter, it might be 5 emails to 5 recruiters or editors, a piece, whatever, but you need to write something every single day. A long text message to a friend, but just try to write something every day.
I'm really pleased you also emphasized very strongly the importance of reading, right? What type of things do you do when you read? I mean, like what things do you look for? What do you notice when you're reading in English?
I always have a dictionary with me. There are so many words that I learn every single day. So if there's a word that I honestly never ever read, I would just write it down on a personal diary. Writing down, actually, not on your computer, but like literally writing down with your own hand a new word helps you a lot in memorizing the word itself. So that is one of the things that I do when I read books. Another thing is just underlining phrases, nice phrases, and also I like talking to myself while I read books and just write on every page that catches my attention, or that reminds me of something that I read in other books or something that I've experienced myself. I would just write with my pencil on those pages. And also I'm a pretty great lover of colored. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that word in English. How do you call them? The colored little piece of papers that you put on in books.
Bookmarks.
Like Post-its. Yeah, bookmarks. So that at the end of the book you can go back to your bookmarks and just see what struck the most your attention about that book.
Oh, you mean actually with like Post-it, you bring notes into the book, like Post-it notes?
Yeah. So the Post-it notes, yeah. The
tiny ones, the thin little strips.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean.
Let me see if I hear some of them. No, I don't have them.
I know what the name for those
Yeah,
is.
I think Paul's got some there.
Yes.
Yeah, these little
I love them.
little sticky notes. Yeah.
How do you call them in English? Because we have a specific word in Italian for them.
I don't know. Post-its. I think they
Post-its. Yeah, Post-its. So it's what I call
Post-its in various sizes are available. I have a question for you regarding those kind of techniques, Camillo. This is something I tried years ago, just as an experiment. Have you ever tried literally copying writing, like finding some passage or paragraph that you think is particularly beautiful and just word for word copying it with a pen on a piece of paper?
No, I've never done that.
Obviously, it's plagiarism, but as an exercise, I found it very interesting because regardless if you're producing the words, you are putting them into your body, right? You're embodying them. And particularly powerful when you use a pen or pencil, you actually get a sense of what you get a sense of what it feels like to produce that sentence. And the more you do it, you're almost training your brain to become familiar with that kind of sentence structures, so that when you try it in the future, it's a little less unusual or scary. And I've actually tried that with some of my students who are more at the intermediate level, just giving them a more challenging paragraph that they wouldn't normally produce themselves, and just get used to what that feels like to write like that, and embodying that structure, the arrangement of words. I think it's kind of interesting. If you have a particularly a particular stylistic writer that you like, you love the way that writer produces those sentences or has a particular style, putting that into your body has a really interesting effect, I think. Not that you're trying to absorb their style and mimic it, but just ingesting. It's like sampling different cuisine, right? It's a way of becoming familiar with another alien style, perhaps.
Doing it mindfully, right? Because you could just be like copying without and like thinking about
That's right.
what you're going to do in the evening or whatever, but you have to do it like mindfully for it to be effective.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really absorbing it word by word and seeing how, like I often talk to students about how whether you're reading or listening, your brain is absorbing a sentence word by word and it's processing it in that sequence. It happens very quickly, of course, but it is a word by word thing. And if you can sort of develop that mindfulness about a sentence, how each word opens a new door, the next word opens another door, and it takes you down this door, and then suddenly there might be a surprise word at the end of the sentence or something. And becoming aware that the writer was consciously producing that effect can be very revelatory, I think. If you haven't tried it, Camillo, I recommend it. It's quite an interesting experiment.
I will for sure. I'm a super fan of handwriting, so I can imagine. Yeah.
Great, guys. What about we have one more question, right? Should we go on to the last question?
Yes, absolutely. I'll ask Camillo.
Yeah.
Do you have any projects or endeavors that you want to tell our listeners about? Any links or things where they can find you? What are you up to these days?
So my biggest dream right now is to publish my thesis, the thesis that I wrote at Columbia Journalism School, and I would be so happy to share it with all of you. So please text me whatever you want on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Actually, text me on LinkedIn, please, so that we can connect, especially if you're a journalist, because I want to send you my thesis. I'm negotiating it right now with a very, very important magazine. Unfortunately, I cannot tell you the name of the magazine because there's a negotiation going on. So that's a great challenge. But if my thesis is going to be published there, I will be the happiest person the happiest person in the world, honestly. So I wrote this piece it's a very long thesis. It's a 9,000 word story that I probably have to cut it down about something that has never been covered by any journalist in the world. And I wondered why. That's why I chose this topic. And it's about the Iranian regime persecution against LGBTQ people who are condemned to death penalty. And thanks to Columbia Journalism School funding, I traveled to Turkey, in a very tiny town in Turkey, where I discovered that the United Nations sends every year, UNHCR sends every year refugees coming from Iran and that are persecuted because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. So I went to the town and interviewed, I would say, a great number of these people, spending time with them for 2 weeks. And then I traveled back here to New York and started writing about that. And so I would be so happy to share it with all of you. I would be so happy to share all of your experiences, and especially if you're based here in New York or on the East Coast in the US, let's catch up.
We're crossing our fingers for you, Camillo. I hope it works out with the application.
Thanks.
Yeah, best of luck.
We'll put your links in the show notes.
So yeah, thanks so much for coming on the episode, Camillo.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a very great pleasure.
Thank you. It's been very inspiring and moving to hear your stories and your views, Camillo. Thank you.
And let's hope this is the end of our technical challenges today. Any challenges that you are facing out there?
Kind of ironic.
All right.
Since challenges was the name of the episode.
Yeah, it was always going to be challenging.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks again, Camillo. And
thank you.
We'll
Thank you
see
so
you guys
much.
next time.
All right, and we'll be in touch.
Okay. Cheers. Take
Cheers.
care.